after accidentally drinking the school bully's water. There was a glitch in my sense of taste. When I eat, I can't taste anything. But when I'm not eating, my mouth can seemingly taste all kinds of delicacies out of thin air. Thanks to this glitch, I ate cucumbers for a week and painlessly lost 3 kilograms. Until one day when I passed by the school bully. I heard him complaining bitterly, "I'm going crazy. Everything I eat tastes like cucumbers." When it all started when I was cleaning the basketball court last Friday. I'm in the sports department, so I've always been very conscientious about cleaning the court. That day, I casually put my mineral water on the steps and then buried myself in sweeping. When I finished sweeping and sat down, there were only a few scattered people left on the basketball court. And they were all far away from me. Without checking, I grabbed the mineral water at hand. Who would have thought that just as I took a big gulp of water, the school bully showed up in front of me with a cold face. And beside him was his gloating good friend. The good friend said half jokingly and half seriously, "You drank Vincent's water. Are you crazy?" I was speechless. I raised the bottle and took a look. Then realized that my mineral water was not this brand. So I immediately got up guiltily. "I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I'll buy you a new one and return it to you." Vincent gave me a cold glance, left a no need, and turned around and walked away. The good friend followed him for a couple of steps, then turned back after a while and cautioned me, "If he says no need, he really means it. Don't buy one and send it to him." I nodded. I wondered in my heart whether there was an underlying meaning in his words. According to reliable rumors, Vincent often hangs out with hooligans outside the school and often gets into fights. His face is often bruised. Although I think this reliable rumor is probably not that reliable. After all, he is studying law. But he is big and tall, and has a haughty face. He gives the impression that if he gets angry, he can easily beat you up. I bought a bottle of water and went to find him according to the class schedule. While he was away, I secretly handed the water to his good friend. After all, his reputation as a school bully is well known. And I don't want him to make things difficult for me because of half a bottle of water. But that night when I got home, I found that my sense of taste had failed. The egg custard tasted bland. And so did the stir-fried pork with peppers. My uncle saw me frowning while eating and asked me, "What's wrong, girl? The food doesn't suit your taste?" I shook my head, afraid that he would drag me to the hospital for sure, and also afraid that I had some incurable disease. I could only tell a lie. "I'm thinking about a high math problem. It's very difficult. Extremely difficult." He nodded as if he understood. And then said, "What problem can be more important than eating? Hurry up and eat first. Come on. Try this bun again. I made it this evening. It's filled with crayfish. Spicy." My uncle runs a small Sichuan restaurant and often asks me to taste the dishes. But I can't eat spicy food. So every time I just take one bite to taste. But today I ate a whole bun. My uncle was dumbfounded and mumbled, "It's not spicy? It shouldn't be." Until he looked up and saw my swollen lips. He was shocked. Fortunately, I only stay at home on weekends. During the weekdays, like ordinary college students, I live on campus. These 2 days at home, I can muddle through and cover up the fact that I can't taste anything. Moreover, in these 2 days, I also discovered a pattern. I can't taste anything, but at a certain time, there is always a taste in my mouth. And it's still delicious things like seafood and chicken wings. So I exploited a glitch and bought a bunch of cucumbers, thinking that it was a waste to eat when I couldn't taste anything. It was better to eat when I could taste something. That way, eating cucumbers was like having a big meal for me. Genius. I'm really a genius. So I ate cucumbers for 4 days and lost 3 kilograms directly. On Friday, I came to clean the basketball court again. From a distance, I saw 2 familiar figures. The school bully and his good friend were sitting with their backs to the basketball court. I was so afraid of disturbing them that I carefully cleaned the area behind them. I really didn't mean to eavesdrop. But Vincent's voice was so full of resentment and so loud. I'm going crazy. Everything I eat tastes like cucumbers. In an instant, I seemed to realize something. So the source of the taste that I felt from time to time was Vincent. It wasn't just me who had a glitch in my sense of taste. Our sense of taste had been swapped. I was so shocked that the broom in my hand fell to the ground. And the two of them turned to look at me. Vincent still had a cold face. If you looked carefully, you could still see a faint trace of resentment on his face. The good friend still had that gloating expression, and said half jokingly and half seriously, "You eavesdropped on Vincent talking. Are you crazy?" I quickly waved my hands, looked at Vincent, and hesitated to speak. Finally, I gritted my teeth and made up my mind. I said to that dangerous friend, "Well, I have something to say to him. Can you leave for a while?" The dangerous friend had an expression as if he understood everything. He patted Vincent on the shoulder and walked away. Vincent looked at me coldly, with an expression as if he was waiting to hear what nonsense I was going to say. I felt guilty being stared at by him, and my mind was in a mess. The first thing I said was, "Maybe. Do you like cucumbers, Vincent?" That's really not what I originally wanted to ask. Who likes cucumbers? Anyway, I don't. But Vincent's way of looking at people is hard to describe. It's a bit contemptuous. And it's normal to be tongue-tied. Although he probably doesn't mean to look down on people. In the end, I blamed it all on his appearance. He's so handsome that it's stressful to stand next to him. Vincent said in a cold voice, "Is this what you want to ask?" I shook my head vigorously, for fear that if I missed this opportunity, my sense of taste would never come back. After organizing my words, I started again. "Well, when you have meals recently, can you also not taste the food?" Vincent raised his eyebrows, as if he was a little interested in what I said. Seeing that the situation was good, I continued, "It should have been like this suddenly after I drank your water by mistake last Friday. The preliminary conclusion I've got now is that our sense of taste has been swapped. Our meal times are different. So when we eat, we can't feel the taste. And when we don't eat, the taste we feel is the taste of what the other person has eaten." I myself felt that this long passage was a bit convoluted. But Vincent replied to me almost immediately. "So, are you the one who eats cucumbers every day?" I nodded embarrassedly and defended myself. "I'm sorry. At first, I didn't know it was a swap. I thought there was something wrong with me. And were you also the one who ate such spicy food that day?" I first let out an "ah," and then realized that he was probably referring to last Saturday, when I ate that spicy crayfish bun. I didn't feel it myself, but my lips were swollen. I gave an embarrassed smile and said awkwardly, "I didn't expect that you can eat spicy food either." Huh. Vincent didn't respond to this. He ruffled his hair a bit irritably and then said, "How can we get it back?" I shook my head to indicate that I didn't know. Actually, I also wanted to get it back. After all, it was really uncomfortable to have delicious food in front of you but not be able to taste it. Just as I was thinking, I saw Vincent hand me the half-drunk bottle of mineral water. I was puzzled. He said, "Try it again in the same way." The half-full bottle of sloshing water was obviously drunk by Vincent. If I hadn't known about this, I would probably have drunk it with my eyes closed. But knowing this, it was a bit difficult to accept. Although I nodded, I was still a bit resistant in my heart, thinking, isn't this an indirect kiss? My movement of reaching out became much slower, probably seeing my coincidence. Vincent couldn't bear it anymore. He took back the water he had handed over and asked me, "Did you bring water?" I nodded and pointed to the steps beside me. He followed my line of sight, didn't stop his steps, walked his steps, picked up the water, opened the cap and gulped down a big mouthful. I was dumbfounded and stared at him after he drank the water. Still, he was the first to speak. "Do you feel anything?" I shook my head. "Let's go to the cafeteria." I nodded and followed his steps, knowing that he meant to go to the cafeteria to have something and try. But somehow, suddenly, I had the illusion that I was his follower. Yao Ming walked around the playground twice. In a flash, he found that we were not at the original place and caught up with us, panting and asking, "Where are you two going?" "The cafeteria," I replied honestly. "Don't follow us for now." This was what Vincent said. Yao Ming's steps gradually stopped. He was completely confused and muttered, "Are you two progressing so fast?" 5. It was exactly the dinner time in the evening, and there were a lot of people in the cafeteria. I followed Vincent into the cafeteria and received stares all the way. I could even feel that someone was staring at us and whispering. I was extremely nervous. After all, I was a nobody with no sense of presence and had never thought that I would be at the center of public opinion. He stopped at the food selection area and asked me, "What do you want to eat?" The food in the cafeteria tasted quite good, especially the duck leg rice. The duck leg was big and firm, and the side dishes were rich and flavorful. Just thinking about it made my mouth water. Seeing that my eyes stopped at the window of duck leg rice, he understood and went to get a portion of duck leg rice. Then he went to the next counter and bought a bowl of dumplings. The two meals were different, which could better reflect the difference in taste. Out of politeness, I still said that I would transfer the meal money to him, but Vincent waved his hand to refuse and handed me the spoon, indicating that I should eat first. I didn't decline. Having not eaten meat for a week, I felt that I could eat a whole cow. However, the moment I took the first bite of the duck leg, I was desperate. There was still no taste. Vincent probably tasted the duck leg and his expression became a bit strange. I put down the spoon embarrassedly and said, "Why don't you try those dumplings?" He nodded, picked up a dumpling, put it in his mouth, took 2 bites, and swallowed it. His eyes were calm. He was calm, but I was not so calm. I held the edge of the table and felt a bit like vomiting. A strange taste rushed straight to my head. "Are these coriander stuffed dumplings you ate?" "Yes. Coriander and beef." Incredible. It was so incredible. How could there be coriander stuffed dumplings in the world? I waved my hand towards him in despair, and said to him, "I can't do it. I can't eat coriander." Then he handed me his water and said, "Maybe it didn't work when I drank yours. Try drinking mine again?" I quickly nodded. I didn't care so much anymore. My fear of coriander overcame everything. I grabbed the water and took a big gulp. After drinking, I said, "Don't eat it. Don't eat it. I'll eat it." I grabbed the duck leg and took a big bite. A bit despairingly, because I still couldn't taste it. 6. I asked Vincent to change to dumplings of another flavor. Finally, this dinner ended with him eating the duck leg rice and me eating the dumplings. Although I didn't really taste the duck leg rice, it was a comfort that the dumplings tasted like duck leg rice in my mouth. Before leaving, Vincent and I added each other's contact information. He told me that if I thought of any method to get the sense of taste back, I could find him to try. Looking at his figure disappearing around the corner of the teaching building, I couldn't help sighing that the school bully didn't seem as scary as I had imagined. At this moment, suddenly someone patted me on the shoulder. I was startled. The person who came was Yolanda from the next dormitory. Although we are in the same major, we usually don't have much interaction. We are just in a relationship where we can call each other by name. The days in late autumn are getting colder, especially in the north. The temperature difference between day and night can be felt in the evening. Yolanda seemed not afraid of the cold. She was still wearing a small fragrant suit, looking like a young lady. She smiled at me and asked me, "Chi-Chi, do you know Vincent? We just met." Sort of? Although I was still a bit confused by this sudden small talk, I still answered honestly. Yolanda seemed to want to say something but stopped. And I seemed to understand. Generally at this time. Is she going to ask next if Vincent has a girlfriend or something? I silently imagined the picture of them standing together in my mind. Handsome man and beautiful woman. Indeed, very well matched. Yolanda didn't say it clearly. She took out her phone from her bag and said, "Can you push his contact information to me?" I was a bit hesitant, thinking that after all, contact information is private. Wouldn't it be better to ask in advance? But Yolanda seemed to see my hesitation and explained, "Don't worry. You just show me his WeChat ID. I'll add him myself. It won't expose you." Seeing that I didn't respond, she took my hand and acted cautiously. "Please, Chi-Chi. I have something serious to find him." Who can resist this? I am not very good at refusing people anyway. Not to mention refusing a fragrant beauty who acts cautiously to me. So when lying in bed at night, I had a sense of uneasiness as if I had done something wrong. This uneasiness reached its peak when Vincent sent me a message. As soon as I saw his message, I bounced up from the bed in a second, afraid that he was coming to interrogate me. Tremblingly, I opened the dialog box. After seeing the content of the message, I still breathed a sigh of relief. "Vincent, is the time not right?" I don't know. It feels like the time this afternoon is almost the same as last Friday. It's all around 5 o'clock. Does it need some stimulation? Break through the sensory limit. Something like that? Vincent. How to break through? Yes. How to break through? Holding my phone, I tossed and turned on the bed and thought for a long time. Suddenly, an idea flashed. I thought of my uncle who runs a Sichuan restaurant. My uncle's family runs a Sichuan restaurant. Let's eat something spicy to stimulate. Or I try coriander. You try the food I hate? Vincent, okay. Seeing that he agreed, I quickly sent the location of the Sichuan restaurant. It's very close to the school. Do you live in the school on weekends? Vincent took a long time to reply me with a single word no. I then asked him if it was far for him to come here. Again, he took a long time to reply me with not far. After vaguely setting the time for dinner the next day, I closed my eyes and went to sleep. Who would have thought that the next day? I waited and waited but still didn't see anyone. The dozen or so messages I sent to Vincent also sank without a trace. 7 after being stood up by Vincent, I was full of anger. My uncle asked me while cleaning, "The person you made an appointment with isn't coming?" I didn't say a word. I turned around and ate the extremely spicy chicken feet that my uncle had placed on the table, thinking, "Vincent, this is you forcing me." But strangely, in the next 2 days, I didn't receive any reply. No taste appeared in my mouth either. At first, I thought my sense of taste had switched back. Soon I found out that it wasn't. I still had no taste when eating, so there was only one explanation left. Vincent hadn't eaten anything for 2 days. Under what circumstances would a person not eat for 2 days? I grabbed a bag and hurriedly ran back to school. It wasn't that I was worried about Vincent's body. Mainly, I was worried about my own sense of taste. I squatted downstairs of the boys' dormitory for a long time. I didn't wait for Vincent. I only waited for his troublesome friend. The troublesome friend looked at me and knew that I was here to look for someone. He came to me and asked, "Tell me, what's the matter? Have you seen Vincent?" The troublesome friend shook his head. "Isn't he with you?" I was greatly surprised, thinking why would he be with me? Before I could reply, the troublesome friend looked pleasantly surprised. Pointing at behind me, he said, "Oh, speaking of the devil, isn't he here?" I looked back and saw Vincent with a dark face, slowly walking over. In a fit of anger, I rushed over. Originally, I wanted to question him why he stood me up. When I took a closer look, Vincent's right hand was wrapped up like a brick. "Sorry." Vincent spoke first, making me feel embarrassed to say anything else. I could only stare blankly at his tightly wrapped right hand and asked, "Did you fight with someone?" Vincent avoided answering and then apologized to me again. "My phone was broken. That's why I didn't reply to you." I quickly waved my hand. I was a bit sweaty, thinking that before it was always just a small injury. This time the injury was a bit severe. Did the little hooligans also upgrade their violence? The troublesome friend said in a strange tone from behind. Oh, didn't reply to you. I? Vincent? The troublesome friend made some sarcastic remarks and then left with a sentence of you to continue chatting. I'll leave first. Vincent and I stood there looking at each other. I still couldn't help but ask the question in my heart. Didn't you eat for 2 days? Vincent seemed a bit reluctant but still nodded. Then shall we go eat something? Following Vincent into the cafeteria again. And again receiving the attention. I chose a corner seat and sat down. After thinking for a while, I asked Vincent. Before our sense of tastes which is back. You tell me what you want to eat. I tell you what I want to eat. Is that okay? Vincent nodded. Then he buried his head in eating the roast duck rice without making a sound. Strange. Very strange. How does Vincent look a little cute and pitiful in this state? Just as I was thinking, the duck leg that Vincent was holding suddenly plopped into the bowl. And a few grains of rice splashed out around the edge of the bowl. The two of us looked at each other again. And the air froze for a brief 2 seconds. Why don't you eat dumplings? I pushed my bowl over. Who would have thought that Vincent was so stubborn? He ignored me completely and continued to pick up the duck leg with his awkward left hand. I really couldn't bear to watch it any longer. And I don't know where I got the courage from. I snatched his chopsticks, picked up the duck leg and handed it to his mouth. It's my fault. I shouldn't have ordered the duck leg rice. As I said this, my voice grew quieter and quieter. Vincent said helplessly, It's okay. But don't shove it right under my nose. At the next day, pictures of Vincent and me appeared in a hot post pinned to the top of the school forum. Shocking. Who on earth is Vincent's girlfriend? Why haven't we seen her before? Looking at the huge title, I had an urge to jump from the 13th floor. My roommate forwarded the post to me and gossiped. My God. Are you really dating Vincent? I can't tell. You've hidden it so well. I was sweating coldly. No, we really aren't dating. Then you two were sitting together and you even fed him. Unless you say you're his aunt. Otherwise I don't believe you two aren't dating. I said. Well, that's not it either. How could I be his aunt? Just as the several people in the dorm were making fun of me. There was a sudden knock on the door. My roommate opened the door. Listened to the visitor's purpose. Then turned around and called me. I went out and saw that it was Yolanda. Yolanda smiled and took my hand, saying, Congratulations. I could tell long ago that your relationship was unusual. I waved my hands in a panic. No. Listen to me explain. I really am not dating him. I was almost on the verge of crying from anxiety. I felt like everyone was poisoned. Why didn't anyone listen to the explanation of the person involved? Yolanda also ignored my explanation, and said to herself. It just so happens that I have something to do with him. Do you know where he is now? I shook my head, thinking that I shouldn't know anyway. Who would have thought that at this time my phone rang? And it happened to be a message from Vincent. I have an idea. Come to the North Gate. Yolanda saw my strange expression when I looked at my phone and probably guessed that it was a message from Vincent. Then can you ask him where he is for me? It would be impolite to refuse again at this time. So I replied to Vincent, it takes about 10 minutes to get there from the girls' dormitory. When I came down with Yolanda, I asked in confusion, why don't you ask him where he is yourself? Yolanda spread her hands. He hasn't approved my friend request. 1 or 2 people haven't approved it. It's so annoying. Vincent. You're so stupid. It was class time. So there were not as many people walking around on campus as usual. The North Gate was relatively remote. And even fewer students went there. Yolanda and I walked for a long time before we saw the North Gate. I have very good eyesight. And I saw Vincent standing there like a telegraph pole from a long distance away. Only, there was also a person standing in front of him. That person kicked Vincent hard? Fortunately, Yolanda was looking down at her phone. I quickly covered her eyes and pushed her whole body in another direction. She was startled by my sudden movement and exclaimed, "What's wrong?" I pulled her and quickly turned left into the lane, and walked quickly for a long distance before saying to her, "Just now Vincent sent me a message saying that he was at the basketball court. You can go find him. I have something else to do, so I won't go with you." Then we just walked this way. "Oh, I'm sorry. It's been a long time since I've been out and I took the wrong road. I'm really sorry. I'll buy you milk tea another day. Hurry up and go." My tone was sincere, and even though Yolanda was suspicious at first, seeing my big-toothed grinning face, she lost her temper. "Then I'll go first?" I nodded. As soon as Yolanda disappeared at the intersection, I turned around and ran towards the north gate. Vincent was half kneeling on the ground, allowing the person in front of him to whip his cane hard on his back. Just looking at it from a distance made me feel horrified. The next second, I rushed towards him like crazy. Actually, I'm not sure why I sent Yolanda away. Perhaps it was because of my changed sense of taste that I put myself in Vincent's shoes and felt that it would be very embarrassing if the girl who liked him saw the scene of being beaten. As I was running, I felt a faint smell of blood in my mouth. When I got closer, I saw that Vincent hadn't made a sound while being beaten like this, and he had bitten his lip until it bled. And his originally expressionless face completely collapsed the moment he saw me. I regretted it very much. I thought that I should have walked with Yolanda instead of standing here, blocking in front of Vincent, and pointing at this man who obviously was Vincent's father and shouting, "Hitting people is wrong." Vincent and his father looked so much alike that anyone with a discerning eye could tell that they were father and son at a glance. But the auras of the father and son were very different. Standing there, his father made you feel that he was a ruthless character. There was also a young assistant standing behind him, looking on coldly at everything, as if he was used to all this. It's only natural for a father to beat his son. "Little classmate, you'd better not meddle in other people's business." Although a little scared, I still replied to him, "It's the 21st century. How can there still be such a so-called natural thing?" There were surveillance cameras at the school gate. If he got angry and hit me as well, at worst I could take the surveillance footage and ask him for compensation. He stared at me silently for a while until Vincent stood up and pulled me behind him. The two of them looked at each other but didn't say anything. After a brief confrontation, Father Wei turned around and got into the car. The car had been driving for a long time, but Vincent didn't look back. I knew that he probably needed some time to prepare himself mentally. I didn't see anything. Unexpectedly, as soon as I finished speaking, he looked back. Usually, he was so arrogant and high-spirited, but now he couldn't hide his dejection. "Thank you." His voice was weak. Remembering the smell of blood in his mouth just now, I was a little worried that he might have internal injuries from the beating. So I asked, "Shall we go to the school infirmary?" Vincent didn't refuse. It seemed that he was really in pain. We didn't talk on the way there. Probably both of us had something on our minds. The school infirmary was not far from the north gate, but because of the somewhat eerie silence between us, the distance seemed much longer. The school doctor was a very kind-hearted middle-aged woman. When I first saw her, I thought she looked friendly. But when she saw Vincent, her first words were not, "Which major are you in, student?" but "Why are you here again?" At first, I thought that Vincent, with his well-known reputation as a school bully, often got into fights and got injured. It was not until Vincent took off his shirt that I realized how wrong I was. Which school bully would be injured like this? New and old injuries, bruises of all shapes piled together. And it was even hard to tell which one was new. There was even a cigarette burn mark on his scapula. I covered my mouth, afraid that I might shout out. I knew that these were not simply wounds from fighting with hooligans. Given his build, only if he didn't fight back at all would he be injured like this. Thinking of the indifferent expression of the assistant standing behind Mr. Wei, I probably guessed that there was only one source of these injuries: Vincent's father. The school doctor opened the medicine and casually handed me the medicine bottle. I reached out to take it. But then she handed me a cotton swab on the other side. "Since your girlfriend is here, let her apply the medicine for you. I happen to have something to do outside. I'll be back in 10 minutes. I'm not his girlfriend," I wanted to explain. But looking at Vincent's back full of scars, I suddenly couldn't bring myself to say it. The school doctor didn't delay and left the school infirmary right away. I was afraid that someone might come in suddenly, so I pulled the curtain by the window before starting to apply the medicine to Vincent. Because these wounds looked really shocking, I was extremely gentle with every touch. When I was applying the medicine to the third wound, Vincent asked me, "Aren't you curious?" "Curious? About what?" "Curious about everything you saw today." "A little." Of course I was curious. But in this situation, it was a bit presumptuous to ask anything. "What you think is right. It was all my father." Vincent seemed to have sorted out his feelings. His speech was no longer as dejected as before. But there was an inexplicable determination? In my opinion, it was even a somewhat tragic determination. I didn't know how to respond, wanting to change the heavy atmosphere. I joked. "They also say that you are a school bully and fight with hooligans outside every day." "I don't know when it was spread like this," Vincent said helplessly. "But my contact with them is not for messing around." "Yeah." There was silence again. I sped up my actions in my hands, finished applying the medicine, and fanned it with my hand for a while, saying while fanning, "If you can't avoid it next time, wear more clothes. Winter is coming soon. It's okay to wear more. It's a lesson from experience," I thought to myself. Vincent nodded with his back to me and put on the shirt that was put aside. I turned around and took the first step out of the school infirmary door. Vincent followed me and called me Chi-Chi. "Huh? I'm telling you this today because I want to say that regarding the smell matter. I want to solve it as soon as possible because I have more important things to do." "Yeah." For a moment, I also wanted to ask. I wanted to ask Vincent why his father beat him. "You are big and strong. Why did you let him beat you? Why didn't you know how to resist?" But just for a moment, I dismissed those thoughts. There are always thousands of reasons why one doesn't resist. And not resisting is never the victim's fault. I should have stood in front of his father like I did just now, and asked that unreasonable abuser. "Even a tiger doesn't eat its cubs. What made you lay hands on your own son?" Remembering some past events, my heart was also in chaos. I walked very fast in front, and Vincent walked beside me, following all the way. When passing by the cafeteria entrance, I stopped for a moment and looked at him, saying, "Don't worry. I won't tell anyone about what happened today." He nodded. I then asked, "What was the idea you thought of this afternoon?" "I went to the North Gate mainly because of the text message sent by Vincent." Vincent looked embarrassed. After hesitating for a while, he still declined. "That probably won't work. I'll go and check if there are other methods." Forget it if he doesn't want to say, I thought. "Let's go to your uncle's place to eat. We didn't make it last time." I was about to nod when I thought of his wounds again. "With those wounds of yours, you can't eat such spicy food, right?" "It's okay. I know what I'm doing." Seeing him like this, I couldn't keep declining either. I sent a message to my uncle and then led Vincent out of the school. Who would have thought that after just a few steps, we ran into Yolanda and that terrible guy head on? I thought to myself, it's all over. I forgot about this. How am I going to explain it to Yolanda now? Unexpectedly, she rushed over and hugged me, saying happily, "Chi-Chi, thank you." So I was left looking completely bewildered, wondering what she was thanking me for. Then she let go of my hand, walked over and took the arm of the terrible guy, who smiled shyly. You too?" I looked at them and then at Vincent beside me, even more confused. Only then did Yolanda explain. Thanks to you. Leo and I have cleared up our misunderstanding, and got back together. Got back together? All right. Vincent isn't the school bully. Yolanda doesn't like Vincent. The terrible guy's full name is Leo. Leo and Yolanda used to be a couple but broke up. And now they're back together. Good heavens. My misunderstanding of this world could be even deeper. Leo came up and punched Vincent on the shoulder. Where are you two going? Yolanda and I were just saying that we wanted to treat you two to a meal. Vincent went back to his usual self in front of others and said casually. You two go ahead. We're going to her uncle's place. Leo was stunned. Your progress is a bit astonishing. Yolanda was happy to have a world of their own. So she dragged Leo away. Before leaving, she waved goodbye to us. I was at a loss for words. Always feeling that they seemed to have misunderstood something. 17 It takes only 20 minutes to walk and take the subway from the school to my uncle's small Sichuan-style restaurant. But it was cold. And I came out without a coat and didn't have time to go back and put one on. After getting out of the subway, there was a 10-minute walk. And I was shivering from the cold. Vincent quietly took off his jacket and gave it to me, leaving only a hoodie on himself. I didn't refuse because it was really too cold. It felt like it could freeze away my period. I thanked him generously and put on the coat. On a weekday evening, the small Sichuan-style restaurant was also extremely busy. After waiting for a long time without getting a table, my uncle sent Vincent and me to the second floor. The fourth floor of a residential building was for living, and the first floor was used as a small Sichuan-style restaurant for business. My uncle meant for us to wait in the living room for a while first because he was too busy. Familiar customers joked with him, saying that his daughter had brought her boyfriend home. He just smiled and didn't explain. I simply tidied up the living room, invited Vincent to sit on the sofa, and poured a glass of water for him. At this time, my uncle brought up a plate of boiled pork slices first, put it on the coffee table, looked at Vincent and then at me, wiped his hands on his apron, and hesitated to speak. He's not my boyfriend. I knew what he was going to ask. So I took the initiative. Hearing this, the smile on his face broadened a little, and he said to Vincent, Young man, eat more. Uncle's cooking skills are good. Just tell Uncle what you want to eat. Just make whatever you like. Uncle, make it spicier. This friend of mine really likes spicy food. Hearing this, Vincent looked at me, raised an eyebrow, then smiled helplessly and turned to my uncle and said, Yes, I really like spicy food. Thank you, Uncle. Okay. No problem. Whether he liked it or not didn't matter. What mattered was that we both had to eat it tonight. An hour later, we paid the price for our bravado. I lay on the carpet with swollen lips. Vincent's lips weren't swollen, but his eyes were red. He sat on the side and drank water vigorously. In the past, my uncle's food was much spicier than this. When I was a kid, I secretly took a sip of the soup and it was so spicy that I was sent to the hospital and had an intravenous drip for 3 days. Yeah. Vincent took another sip of water and asked, Have you been living with your uncle all this time? I opened my eyes and saw him staring at the photo of me and my uncle on the wall, and replied, Yes. That photo was taken when I first arrived at my uncle's house at the age of 12. Vincent had more questions, but out of politeness, he didn't continue to ask. Just like I did that afternoon. 12 because it was too spicy. We couldn't really taste other things that night. So we went back to school together. The next day when I woke up, I ate something casually and found that my sense of taste still hadn't returned. So I knew that the method last night had still failed. I sent a message to Vincent about this, and Vincent only replied with yeah. In the following few days, when I sent messages to Vincent again, he didn't reply much. And as always, he ate very little. I was thinking, could it be that all the seafood and chicken wings I ate during the first week after the switch were just an illusion? Having dinner with my roommate in the cafeteria, I ate without any taste. And a little angrily. I took out my phone and sent him a message. Brother. No matter what you're busy with, take some time to eat. My mouth is almost tasteless. After a few hours, Vincent replied, sorry. I will eat. Vincent seemed very busy. I remembered that afternoon when he said he had more important things to do. And I always had a bad premonition. In the following 2 days, I started to look up literature in the library to see if there were any cases of taste swapping. I even found a few books on the occult in a corner of the library and crouched there reading for 2 afternoons. Finally, I found a little clue, although that method was a bit far-fetched. Just when I was hesitating whether to tell Vincent about this method, there was a smell of blood in my mouth again. Unlike last time. This time the smell of blood was stronger and more terrifying. The smell of rust made people instinctively want to vomit. I could feel my face turn pale instantly. With such a strong smell, either drinking blood or vomiting blood was possible. Drinking blood was unlikely. After all, Vincent wasn't a vampire. Thinking of this, my steps couldn't help but quicken. I took out my phone and, without caring so much, dialed Vincent's number. The phone rang for a long time, but no one answered. The same thing happened even after several repetitions. I made a prompt decision, found Yolanda, and then contacted Leo through Yolanda. Only then did I learn that Vincent hadn't returned to the dormitory for a week. Leo didn't know where Vincent's home was, but he knew a billiards hall where Vincent would go outside the school. He usually met those people in society there. I was a little flustered and said that something must have happened to Vincent. Leo didn't dare to be careless either. So the 3 of us took a taxi to the billiards hall. When we arrived at the billiards hall, we found that there were only the boss and a table of guests inside. The boss was still sitting at the bar, playing Fight the Landlord on his mobile phone. Boss. Do you have an impression of a very tall and fair-skinned boy with a small mole at the corner of his mouth and long, curly hair? His name is Vincent. Do you have an impression? I said anxiously. Hearing this, the boss looked up at me and said unexpectedly, Vincent. Didn't he go to the construction site with those good friends of his today? The construction site? Leo suddenly realized and said, I remember. Vincent's father is in engineering construction. Has he gone to his father's construction site? The bad feeling in my mouth grew stronger instead of fading away, and I became more panicked. I asked Leo, do you know the address? No. But I know the name of his father's group. I'll look it up. Seeing that I had lost my color, Yolanda hurried over to support me and said, Chi-Chi, don't be impatient. Maybe he just went there to help? I shook my head, thinking to myself, no, I should have known long ago. The reason why Vincent looked at his father so calmly was not because of numbness, but because of forbearance. Because he had a bigger plan and the determination to perish together. He was just waiting for an opportunity. Vincent was just like me in the beginning. 13 Finally, we saw Vincent indeed on his father's construction site. He was lying on the ground, with blood on his forehead, at the corner of his mouth and on his arms. The people around were also injured to varying degrees. Lying or sitting, I was extremely frightened and couldn't move my feet. It was Leo who took the first step forward. He turned around and told us to call the police. Yolanda took out her mobile phone and dialed the number. I, however, was rooted to the spot and couldn't react at all. How come things in the world can't be reversed? Why do some people always beat their closest relatives? I couldn't understand and always felt pain all over my body. Those wounds that had healed years ago seemed to itch again at this moment. Until Vincent, who was lying there, turned his head and made eye contact with me. Then I rushed over. At first, the scene was a bit chaotic. Later, the police and doctors arrived. Some people were handcuffed and taken away, and some were carried on stretchers to the hospital. I held Vincent's hand and followed him into the ambulance. I don't know when I lost consciousness. When I woke up, our hands were still holding each other. Vincent was leaning on the bed, carefully drinking porridge with one hand. Seeing that I woke up, He put down the spoon in his hand and looked at me quietly. I was a bit dazed. After a long while, I saw that his head was wrapped in gauze, and there was a cut at the corner of his mouth. The smell of blood in my mouth disappeared, replaced by the warm smell of porridge. Does it hurt? I asked him. Vincent shook his head. Did he do this? Sort of. But not exactly. He gave the order. Vincent said hesitantly. I felt my hand was a bit numb. Only then did I realize that Vincent and I were still holding hands. I quickly let go, pretended to be nonchalant and tidied my hair before continuing. Why? Instead of answering my question directly, he asked me, do you know why I study law? Because one day, I want to send him to prison with my own hands. I was stunned. Vincent continued. I originally thought I still needed some more time, but I found it was too late. He was secretly transferring his property and preparing to go abroad. If I didn't start soon, there would be no chance. My friends in the billiards hall may look like hooligans, but in fact they are also short-term workers on his construction site, and are often deducted from their wages. I mingled with them, and inquired about some information. I knew that he was cutting corners on construction materials, and I had been looking for evidence to report him. It was just that they hid it deeply. They were discovered when finishing up today. And that's why the fight broke out. I was shocked. Is it still in time? It is. When you came, I had already asked someone to send out the materials. And it has been reported in the news. That's good. That's good. I don't know how long Vincent has been working on this. But judging from his injuries, he probably had to act submissively in front of his father, which might be more uncomfortable than being beaten. I felt inexplicably sad. He asked again, aren't you curious about why I am like this? I am. But it doesn't matter if you don't want to say. I don't mind saying. I was just waiting until I really accomplished it to have the courage to say. The reason why I am like this is because of my mother. She was gentle, kind, knowledgeable, intelligent, and could dance. But my father was a domestic abuser. He broke her leg and lied that she had broken it herself. Finally, she committed suicide. Vincent smiled bitterly. But I shed tears before him. How could it be so hard? I thought. Intentionally causing disability. Shouldn't one go to prison? Why can some people be carefree and just say, it was a family dispute and get away with it? Why did Vincent have to endure the blows on his body again and again alone? Why did Vincent have to find the evidence by himself and finally send him to prison with another charge? I couldn't figure it out and felt extremely aggrieved. Tears blurred my vision. Vincent reached out to wipe my tears and said softly, stop crying. It's so salty. 14 because the evidence was complete, and the public opinion pressure was great. Vincent's father was sentenced very quickly. On the day the judgment was announced, Vincent came to me. He asked me if I would like to accompany him to the cemetery in the suburbs. The north had fully entered winter. But when the weather was sunny, it wasn't that cold. I bought a bunch of flowers to show my respect. Vincent and I walked up the steps. When I saw the beautiful and intelligent face on the tombstone, I couldn't help but be moved. I placed the flowers in front of the tomb and stepped aside to give Vincent time to talk alone. When we were leaving, I asked Vincent why he wanted me to accompany him to the cemetery. He just looked at me deeply, with a somewhat hesitant look in his eyes. You want to be in a relationship with me, right? I don't know where I got the courage from, but I took the initiative to ask him. Vincent nodded, but his next sentence was, but I'm worried. Worried about what? That you'll reject me. Me? Why? My father is in prison. Our children won't be able to take the civil service exam in the future. I asked the driver to turn around and said to him, we can be together. But first you accompany me to a place. The destination was the prison in the west of the city. Vincent was a little surprised when he heard this. But the next second he still held my hand. The person I was going to visit was my mother. Only one person was allowed to visit in the prison. So Vincent stayed outside and waited for me. When I saw my mother, I couldn't help but want to cry. My mother was also crying. She looked at me through the thick glass and asked me how I was recently. Whether I ate well. Whether I was happy. And whether I was healthy. Mom. I'm fine. You should also take good care of yourself. We'll be reunited soon. I said playfully. At that time. I'll bring my boyfriend to see you. Hearing this. My mother's face showed joy. Our Chi-Chi has a boyfriend already. The visiting time was short. We just chatted a little about family matters. And then the time was up. I saw her disappear behind the door before turning around to compose myself and go out. When Vincent saw me come out, he still held my hand first and didn't say a word. Just rubbed the part between my thumb and index finger. My father was a domestic abuser. One day when he was drunk, he beat us to death. When my mother resisted, she stabbed him a few more times. So she was sentenced for a longer time. She will be released from prison at the end of this year, I said in a calm tone. After hearing this, Vincent was stunned for a moment. So, if we are in a relationship, get married and have children, he won't be able to take the civil service exam. Vincent hugged me tightly and said in a muffled voice, my fault. I shouldn't have worried about these unimportant things. I was clearly very happy. But I always wanted to cry. Vincent and I confirmed our relationship. Leo and Yolanda were shocked. Yolanda said, just started? I thought EQ had been in a relationship for a long time. Leo said, before I saw you two were not in a relationship. You two already had dinner together every day. I said awkwardly, well, it's a long story. Our sense of taste still hasn't come back yet. On a sunny weekend afternoon, the four of us went out for a picnic. I was finally ready to tell Vincent the method I saw in the book that day. After all, for such a long time, we had tried every method. And this was the only one left. I mysteriously pulled Vincent into the tent. I stammered for a long time but still couldn't say it. Vincent said, what's wrong? Are you not feeling well? I shook my head, took a deep breath, and made up my mind. I whispered, can you kiss me? Vincent was a person who rarely showed a shocked expression. So when I saw it, I couldn't help but laugh. While I was laughing, he bent down and kissed me. I was a little dazed. He quickly lowered his head and kissed me again. This time, it was not just a light touch. So when Leo and Yolanda saw us come out with red faces, they knew what had happened, and just smiled without saying a word. Finally, I explained to Vincent that this was the method I saw in the book, saying that kissing might bring our sense of taste back. Vincent mumbled while kissing me, I knew it long ago. Huh? Extra Vincent and I got our sense of taste back. God knows how happy I was at the moment when I ate the roast chicken wings. I was so happy that I wanted to cry. Yolanda saw that I was so happy just because of eating a chicken wing. So she took the chicken wings from the other two people's bowls and gave them to me. Leo joked, is this all you want? Why don't you think about something more luxurious? I shook my head. I'm still thinking about the duck leg rice in the cafeteria. Vincent, I'm thinking about the dumplings stuffed with coriander and beef. They were very curious about why the two of us were like people who hadn't eaten for hundreds of years. But then I found that the situation was not very stable. Sometimes if we kissed too much, our sense of taste would change back again. So occasionally when Vincent made me angry, I would secretly kiss him when he wasn't paying attention. And then go to my uncle's place to have a meal of extremely spicy chicken feet. Before the Chinese New Year, I took Vincent back to my home to meet my uncle. This time I introduced him solemnly, saying that he was my boyfriend, and emphasized that he couldn't eat any spicy food at all and that he was just bragging last time. My uncle cooked a table of dishes. When he was happy drinking with Vincent, he grabbed him and said, if you dare to be sorry to Chi-Chi, I will really beat you up. Then he fainted first by himself. Looking at Vincent's figure busy taking care of people, I always felt that a missing corner in my heart was filled. Before the Chinese New Year, The three of us went to the prison in the west of the city to pick up my mother, who was released from prison. Vincent bought flowers himself. I also bought flowers. The four of us left that place openly with 2 bunches of flowers. We went home and had a reunion dinner. The heat was rising on the dinner table and the atmosphere was pleasant. I turned my back and secretly wiped away a tear. To be honest, neither my life nor Vincent's life can be considered perfect. We have both endured a lot of hardships, both physically and mentally, and shed a lot of tears. Fortunately, those broken days finally come to an end. In this way, how can it not be considered perfect?